I hope that some of you take the plunge and get involved, no matter how difficult it sounds. So if you take one thing away from my remarks today, let it be this, that you are democracy's next generation, and that you are not here to sit on the sidelines. And I'm going to ask you to lead, and I'm going to ask you to stand up for what you believe in. That is not always easy to do, as we've just heard. You will face criticism, sometimes fairly, sometimes less so. Online, people will write things that are often horrible to read. For women, it's inevitably harder. But the fight is worth it. And as our way comes under increasing pressure, we will look to you to carry the torch, as it was passed on to us. In 1988, just outside this building on the Healy lawn, President Reagan gave a speech on the importance of freedom as the first principle of society. And he reached out to the millions who at the time still lived under the yoke of communism. There were millions who lived in our Europe under that yoke who heard him, who believed in a better way, and who looked to the United States and what was then Western Europe. Those words reverberated around the world and into the ears of those people in the Baltics, in East Germany, in Poland, in Hungary, and so many more who wanted their children to live in liberty. An idea as old as this nation, but that speaks to the soul of everyone. A year later, that yoke crumbled, and millions in Europe were set free. And I remember watching on a small television in my grandmother's house the Berlin Wall come crashing down. Then just a month later, in what was the worst storm in a generation, President Bush met President Gorbachev in Malta, in my country, to officially end the Cold War. A peace that so many had for decades thought impossible was found in the middle of the Mediterranean on an island 17 miles long, 9 miles wide. Remember that next time you think or you are told that you are too small to matter. That's the spirit that we need to see today. Mine is a large generation to have known that world, a world where democracy was not a given. Many of you have grown up knowing only peace, and more broadly, prosperity. And perhaps we did grow a little bit comfortable, even complacent with the idea that our way of free and open societies was here to stay, that we had won the definitive ideological battle of our time. Perhaps we allowed the pendulum to swing too far, thinking we would never go back. Perhaps we forgot the lessons of history. Then came February 24th, 2022, when Russian tanks rolled into free Ukraine. On that date, our international order was dealt a blow, and our sense of security took a hit. The invasion of Ukraine marked a generational shift. We realized that the economic ties that we had built would keep us safe, but they did not do so. We were vulnerable. Our way was threatened. That is what came under attack. And Ukraine became, I call it, our line in the sand. Being unfree is still a part of our living memory as Europe. We know what is at stake, and we will rise to meet this moment to ensure freedom and to ensure peace. Real peace, not subjugation. Not a peace that paves the way for a bloodier battle down the road. So now our democracies collectively are being called upon once again to stand up and work for that elusive peace, a peace that requires leadership. And America and Europe have proved again and again that peace and progress requires cooperation, that freedom and justice are not simply ideals, but they are shared responsibilities. Our shared future relies on the strength of that transatlantic relationship, and our joint drive for peace in Ukraine is the litmus test for our enduring strength of the way we live, the way we know, the values we hold so dear. I call it the test of our political generation. Now, our bond, and I've been asked this a lot over the past days and months, is more than just geopolitical and historical. It is fundamentally logical. We need to work together to find shared solutions to common challenges and the demands, very similar ones, that our democracies face. On both sides of the Atlantic, people want the same thing: affordable housing, security, safety, stable jobs, the hope for a better future for their children. And it is the job of our democracies, all of us who run for election and re-election, to answer those demands. No one else will do it for us. Because ultimately, for democracy to work, it has to provide solutions to the real problems that people face. Otherwise, we should absolutely not be surprised when people find comfort in the extremes and the fringes that only offer false answers to absolutely impossible questions. Those of us in the positions of influence have an obligation, even a duty, to deliver on the promise made a generation ago. Across our two continents and beyond, more and more people are questioning democracy. Is it worth it? Do I vote? Choosing not to vote, or voting against something rather than for something. In response, we need to take the bold decisions that bring the change people want. We need to prove to them that our shared democratic path is the right way, even the only way, to build a better future for all. The truth is, it's much easier to sell an extremist narrative. So it is on to us to do what we can to reinforce the political center, to stand with those who want to build rather than those who want to destroy, to show that we have the answers even to the hardest of questions, that yes, there is value in compromise, that we prefer to bring people on board rather than push them away. Our way must deliver better and faster if it is to remain the political driving force of this generation. We cannot ignore reality and assume that people will vote just because that is what they have always done or what their parents have done. We need to take the argument to the extremists and we need to beat them with facts, with actions that are anchored in our shared values. We challenge their narrative, not ignore it. Now, what does that mean? That means that the center must not only hold, but it must deliver. And that is becoming harder, which is why we need to get better. The fringes and the extremes are on the rise, and that threatens our way. We need to be honest about that. And the real threat comes if the center cannot deliver real results. We have to take the bull by the horns, even if it is very difficult, if it seems impossible. But we can never also underestimate how fragile this all is. We can do that, but we need to be faster, we need to be better, and we need to do it together. Now, the international order that we all benefit from, that keeps our economies moving and drives our societies forward, was built together, not individually. And that's why our transatlantic relationship and partnership matters, why America first cannot become America alone. And I have to say, I've been really encouraged by my meetings on the Hill this week. We can get into more details. I've seen a real difference between a few months ago and today. And why is this? Because the EU-US trade is currently worth $1.7 trillion annually. And since we forged a US-EU trade agreement this summer, we've regained economic ground and restored opportunity and security for businesses on both sides of the Atlantic. Of course, this agreement is just one step forward. A lot of things still need to be done. And to make life for people on both sides of the Atlantic easier, more prosperous, more secure, we need to do more, much more, to make our economies work for people. In Europe, that means that we need to absolutely make our legislation clearer, simpler, easier to navigate. And during my visit here, I'm speaking with American and European CEOs whose businesses span the Atlantic, who tell me, I need to grow in the United States and I need to grow in Europe. And there's potential for both at the same time and not at each other's expense. And my message is consistently the same. Europe is open for business because Europe can be stronger as an economy when it benefits everyone. And it can benefit everyone. It guarantees our open economies. It also guarantees our social safety nets that we are proud of. And for us, this is a win-win. Of course, we still have a long way to go. Europe needs to do much more to simplify, not complicate people's lives. People ask us, do not make our life too difficult. But importantly, and I say this with pride after a lot of work that has been put into it, both our economies are heading in the right direction. Our continents, of course, don't see eye to eye on everything. They don't even have to. No one would expect that from free-thinking allies. But that doesn't mean that we can't cooperate and learn from each other and the way we do things. Because ultimately, we're both working to make the technologies of the future, like artificial intelligence, work for democracy, not abuse it, not harm it. There are areas where we should be collaborating and not moving in opposite directions. And one person put it to me that the next transformative battle we will have to face is democratic versus autocratic AI, for example. So on the big issues, I'm convinced we are on the same side, showing that our democratic approach, our strong, boring center, can deliver change and that we can deliver peace. Because as Americans and Europeans, if there's one thing I've learned, is that we value peace. We understand the sacrifice that is too often needed to secure it. Our stories, common stories, joint stories, families that have grown together over 2 continents, are written in the sacrifices of those who gave everything to secure freedom over tyranny. And in the words of one of this university's former students, President Clinton, and I quote, "Generations of Americans have understood that Europe's freedom and Europe's stability is vital to our own national security." And that remains true today. That means that Europe must realize that we need to play a greater role in our own defense. It is true, we sometimes struggle to adapt to shifting geopolitical sands with the necessary speed and agility. But that story is changing fast, and we're seeing this every day. We are rising to meet NATO's new target of 5% of GDP for defense. Last year, defense spending by the European Union's member states reached unprecedented levels. Meanwhile, we're working to increase our own defense systems interoperability and ramp up production. We know that it's necessary to find and keep peace through this. Shared security, prosperity, progress, this must be our roadmap to ensuring our democracies fulfill their promises, delivering results that people can understand, that they can see, and that they can feel every day. So I've tried in the last few minutes to be quite frank about the challenges ahead, but I believe that as close allies we can and we will overcome them, and that democracy, with all its flaws and its shortcomings, is worth standing up for, and that our way can still be the guiding force that this world needs, and your generation can still see politics as the outlet of change that I know it to be. Thank you.